Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. For today's presentation, I'll be talking about introduction of Philippines. The background: the Philippines are the highest portion of partly submerged mountain chain. Is made up of more than 7,000 islands. The three main island groups are Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. The Philippines is one of the most westernized nation in the Southeast Asia, a unique blend of Eastern and Western culture. The current population of Philippines is 112,309,000 based on the projection of the latest United Nations data. The UN estimate the July 1st, 2022, the population at 112,508,000. Philippines ranks number 13 in the list of countries by population. The Philippines largest city is Quezon City, which contains 2,936,000 people. It forms a part of the wider metropolitan Manila area, which is comprised of 70 cities and municipalities and has an overall population of 12.8 million people. Into a bit about politics. The politics of the Philippines takes place within a three-branch governmental system. The country is democracy led by a directly elected president who serves as both of the head of state and the head of government. The president heads the executive branch and has significant political power. Presidents are limited into the 6-year term of office. The current president is Rodrigo Roa Duterte. A bit about geographical. The country Philippines is an archipelago, approximately 115,000 square miles. Most of the islands are pretty small, but a few large like Luzon and Mindanao account for a large portion of surface area. The islands are broken up into three categories: Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, which are basically north, central, and south respectively. While some islands are much more populated than others, overall population the city of Philippines is 939 people per square mile. Total religion in Philippines. Religion in Philippines is marked by a majority of people being at the hand of Christian faith. At least 88% of the population is Christian. About 79% belong to the Catholic Church, while 9% belong to Protestantism, Orthodoxy, Easternist, Independent Catholicism, and other denomination official. The Philippines is a secular nation, while other majorities religion is Islam, approximately around 5 to 6%. Others than that, Buddhism is practiced by 2% the population by Japanese Filipino community. A bit about economy. Economy of Philippines is world 32nd largest economy by nominal GDP according to International Monetary Fund 2031, and the 12th largest economy in Asia. A bit about GDP in economic sector. Agriculture 7.4, industry 34, services 58.6%. A bit about ranking in the world. Philippines is the second happiest country in South Asia according to the 2022 World Happiness Report. Also in the GII report, the Philippines ranked 15 in 2020, up 4 notch from its previous ranking 2019. The country ranked in 73rd in 2018 and 2017. Lastly, the minority challenge towards the minority. Many are driven from their traditional land by militarization, tribal conflict, and the expansion of large-scale development projects, which frequently bring a little or no benefit to local communities, particularly women. Many indigenous women are unable to secure employment with the mining companies and live to find work in urban areas, suffering extreme poverty in cities like the northern city of Baguio or the capital city Manila. They often face poverty and exclusion as a result of their limited formal education and the fact their skill may not be suited in the urban market. Also, an Islamist insurgency also contributed to widespread insecurity in Mindanao, where agreement was reached in 2018 with the largest group, the Moro Islamic (MILF). The whole plebiscite in January 2019, creation of a larger autonomous Muslim region known as Bangsa Moro. A large number of ISIS-affiliated extremist groups continue to operate outside the framework of any peace agreement.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad FITRI bin Muhammad NOOR, and I will explain about production in Philippines. Economic production The major industry of the Philippines include manufacturing and agribusiness. Within manufacturing, mining and mineral processing, pharmaceuticals, shipbuilding, electronics, and semiconductors are the focus areas. The Philippines is one of the most attractive pharmaceuticals market in the Asia-Pacific regions. Next point is mining. The Philippines has been ranked as the 5th most mineral country in the world, with an estimate 1 trillion in untapped reserve of copper, gold, nickel, zinc, and silver. Next is electronics. Electronic manufacturing is the most important industry of the Philippines. Electronic exports from the Philippines total 28.6 billion in 2016, accounting for more than 50% of the country exports. The industry has been an important source of jobs and foreign direct investment, attracting multinational companies like Intel, Acer, Texas Instruments, and Toshiba to invest in the Philippines. Lastly is shipbuilding. In late 2016, the global shipbuilding industry was valued at 80.2 billion, with export in 2015 at approximately 117 billion. The industry, while in a current state of overcapacity with a young average age, global fleet still sees demand for new builds as well as conversion and repairs, particularly due to increasing environmental regulations. Company involved. The Philippines is also rich endowed with metallic resources, and the country has attracted many foreign companies to its land. First Gen and Sumitomo Metal Mining Co. Ltd. are among them. Sumitomo Metal Mining Co. Ltd. engaged in the mining business. It operates through the following segment: mineral resources, smelting and refining materials, and others. The mining resources segment includes the exploration, development, and production of non-ferrous metal resources, as well as the sale of ores and other products. First Gen Corporation is a leading power production and energy services company, subsidiary of First Philippine Holding Corporation. It operates several power plants throughout the country based upon several sources of energy: geothermal, solar, natural gas, hydroelectricity, and wind power. And lastly is a percentage of major productions. The services sector of the Philippines overtook the industrial sector in terms of contribution to the GDP during the early 1980s, increasing from 36% in 1980 to more than 60% as of 2020. The service sector now employs an equivalent amount of the country's workforce, which is more than the agricultural and industrial sector combined.
I'm going to identify the economic distribution in the country that we chose, which is Philippines. The first economic distribution in Philippines is poverty. 3.9 million additional Filipinos were pushed into poverty in the first half of last year, with economic officials blaming pandemic-related lockdown measures, jobless losers, reduced family spending, and forced company closure. Poverty in the country increased to 23.7% in the first half of 2019, up from 21.1% in the same period last year. The number of Filipinos living in poverty has now surpassed 26 million, accounting for little under 25% of the population. The second economic distribution is income distribution. As the first quarter of 2022, the share of households in the Philippines who altered income in the previous 3 months owing to the COVID-19 epidemic According to a personal financial study done in the Philippines, during the first quarter of 2022, 26% of respondents claimed that the COVID-19 epidemic has reduced their household income. In contrast, 36% of respondents said that their household income grew as a result of the epidemic. The remaining 38% of respondents said that their family income remained unchanged. Lastly is economy policy. In both policy and practice, the Philippines has always had a private enterprise company. The government largely acted through fiscal and monetary policy as well as regulatory authorities. Although public sector firms grew under Marcos' administration, the government's direct involvement in economic activities was largely restricted. The Aquino administration embarked on a massive policy drive to consolidate and privatize government-owned and controlled business. Economic planning mainly consisted of setting macroeconomic growth targets, project planning and implementation, and advising the government on the allocation of capital money for development initiative. There are so many companies involved in economic distribution in Philippines, and one of them is the Manila Water Company. The Manila Water Company, which provides water utility service to about 7 million people in the eastern part of Manila, Philippines. As an example of this business model, the company took over the public water provider for the eastern part of Manila in 1999.
Now, we talk about the economic consumption of Philippines. Agriculture is one of the composition of the gross domestic product for the Philippines. So, under agriculture, there are three major consumption that have an impact on the economy in the Philippines, which is firstly, led by rice, followed by corn, and lastly, sweet potatoes. In contrast, the low level of productivity and slow growth in the Philippines agricultural sector has resulted in the high incidence of poverty within the sector. So, the first major consumption is rice. The Philippines is a major rice consumer with a population of roughly 110 million and annual per capita rice consumption of 133 kg. Rice is typically eaten at every meal and provides the largest share of the average Filipino's calorie intake. Phil Rice notes that only 2 out of 10 Filipino households meet the estimated average requirement for vitamin A in their daily diet. Golden rice is the second genetically engineered product approved for cultivation in the Philippines, following corn, and the first designed to specifically address nutrition. Secondly, corn. Corn is the most important staple crops in the Philippines and also one of the major consumption that impact on Philippines economy. It ranks second to rice in the utilization of agricultural resources. It is used not only for human consumption but also for animal feeds and industrial uses. Hence, it is a vital crop in the development of the livestock and manufacturing industries. And lastly, sweet potatoes. In 2020, the value of sweet potatoes produced in the Philippines reached around 10.72 billion Philippine pesos. The production value of sweet potatoes in the country had been gradually increasing in the past decade. Next, there are so many companies involved in economic consumption in Philippines, which is Chen Yi Adventures Incorporated and Family Farms Incorporated. The first company, which is Chen Yi Adventures Incorporated. Chen Yi's rice processing complex built in Alangalang near Tacloban on Leyte Island is the largest rice milling facilities in the region, with 10 30-ton grain dryers and 7-ton per hour processing lines. And the second company is Family Farms Incorporated. The FFI business model focuses on organic rice marketing as its core business. To differentiate its business from other rice millers and traders, FFI devotes its operation on milling only organically grown rice from farms that are organically certified and in cooperation. That's all from me. Thank you.
Around 5% Filipinos from various ethno-linguistic groups practice Islam, with more than half of them residing on the vast southern island of Mindanao. They have established sultanates and viceroys on mainland Mindanao and Sulu. Moros were Muslim converts and Muslim dominant reached as far as Tondo, which was eventually displaced by the Bruneian Empire vassal state of Manila. For education in the Philippines is provided through both official and informal channels. Formal education typically lasts 14 years, and it is structured in a 6-4-4 system: 6 years of primary school, 4 years of secondary school, and 4 years of higher education leading to a bachelor's degree. This is one of the world's shortest formal education periods. Besides that, the establishment of formal Islamic schools such as the KAMIL Islam Institute in Marawi City corresponded with a revival of Islam among Filipino Muslims in the 1950s and the 1960s. Muslim missionaries from the Middle East, as well as Filipino Muslims educated in Islamic countries, helped to expand the region's madrasah network. This network provided education alternatives for Muslim Filipinos who were skeptical of the government's educational goals and wanted to develop their identity as a Muslim rather than Filipinos. Next, the Philippines is primarily a non-Muslim country with a burgeoning halal industry. In the Philippines, the halal industry is still in its infancy. Nonetheless, the Philippine Halal Export Development and Promotion Act, Republic Act 10817, was signed in May 2016, establishing the Philippine Halal Export Development and Promotion Board. The Philippine Halal Food Export Company was still in its early phases, with instabilities in the industry and macro environment causing changes in structures, producers, practices, and infrastructure development. Players with greater pre-entry breadth and experience, significantly large halal exporters, do better in the expanding market. And last, the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy (PCID) was founded in 2002 as an independent, non-profit organization committed to the study of Islamic and democratic political ideals, as well as the pursuit of peace, democracy, and the development among Muslim communities. The PCID aspires to express the voice of the Philippines Bangsamoro and Muslims, allowing them to participate meaningfully in both the global discourse on Islam and democracy and the battle for self-determination and development. PCID arose from concern talks among young Muslim intellectuals. Their fear about the future of democracy in Muslim Mindanao arose from the rising popularity of the argument that Islam and democracy are incompatible.